Hey, man, I think my dad's probably not coming. I think he's enjoying shawarma in South Florida.
I don't blame him. I don't blame him.
Yeah, tough break, huh?
He's got the hard life out there. A hard life out there.
Yeah.
Well, we miss him, but let's get started nonetheless. So I want today's topic is out of this world, if you might say. I want to talk about something a little bit more topical, not as tied into our weekly parsha like we've been studying, but something that I started to get into a little bit yesterday in a different conversation. But I want to really go a little bit deeper into today, and that is a bit of a theological question, and it is a perspective on extraterrestrial alien life. Now you may say, well, Rabbi, why are we talking about this? Why is this even relevant to us? Well, let me just, for those who are not following what's going on in the world, let me share with you real quickly what's actually happening here. So here we go. So take a look here. This is the NASA Perseverance rover has just landed on Mars. If you didn't know that, it has. This is a National Geographic article. So after a harrowing plunge to the thin Martian atmosphere, the robotic explorer Perseverance, known as Percy, can now begin its landmark hunt for signs of ancient life. It's very exciting. And so the entire idea here is that we sent this rover all the way to Mars on a long trip. And the hope is that we might be able to find something, some sense of microbial alien life or other life forms on Mars to be able to bring back into study. And this is actually a kind of cool picture of the actual rover landing. This, if anyone's interested in this kind of tech, this is all automated, all artificial intelligence, because you can't communicate with something that's like literally like, so far away. So it's all had to be pre-programmed, and it's cool how they were able to literally like land it just perfectly on Mars. But for our purposes today, what I really want to focus on is that almost a Jewish perspective on alien life. In other words, if we were to find alien life, if this was successful, if this all worked out the way that we thought it would, or that the science proves, so how do we make sense of this? Does the Torah allow for, does the Torah predict or deny the existence of alien life? What would it do to Judaism if we actually discovered aliens?
The Torah doesn't. The Torah doesn't say God created this world and it's the only world. God created the heavens and the earth. There's no affirmation, but there's also no denial that that there could be something else out there.
That's a really interesting point, right? So there's a big debate when we say exactly like what Ira said is the Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim et haaretz. God creates the heavens and the earth. And what do we mean by heavens? We're not sure. But we would all probably agree, I think, Ira, that if God created more life, then why is the story of creation so focused on just our planet? Right?
I would give you my theory, but I think you all would probably think I was crazy. So we'll skip that for now.
Now you've intrigued us. I'm willing to. Do you want to share it? I don't want to pressure you. Do you want to share
it? I mean, So we talk about in certain instances regarding the Torah that there were, God started over again, like he created man and he had to start again, multiple times.
Right.
Why is it not possible that there's an exact replica, I'm talking about like topographically or physically, of Earth somewhere in another galaxy where things actually went a certain way differently than they went on this Earth?
Yeah, so we're going to look into that a little bit. It's a really great point. And there's also the notion of like the multiverse, if you're a comic book fan or anything like that, right? Where there could be multiple realities that are happening at the same in different dimensions. I don't know what you'd call it. So that's possible too. There's like Ira 1 and Ira 2. There's an Ira on here, like Earth 1, and maybe there's another Ira on Earth 2.
God forbid there should be more than one of this guy.
Well, in any case, these are actually really big for us to think about. I mean, they're cute to think about also, but they pose, I think, very big theological questions for us. And let me ask other questions. I don't mean to make a joke. These are real questions, which is like, let's say we did find alien life. Could an alien convert to Judaism? If we consider aliens to be animals, for instance, are we allowed to eat them? Why does the Torah not make any explicit mention of them whatsoever? Now, again, those might sound like silly questions, but I don't mean them to be silly questions. I mean them to be exactly what they are, which is these are deep questions about like our theology as we try to understand it, our story of creation, our role in the universe, and how we relate to all of that. And so I want to show you just a few sources, a few different ideas that might allude to in some way, some verses that might allude to extraterrestrial life. Obviously, we are familiar with the idea of an extraterrestrial life in the form of angels, but I'm talking really about something a little bit different now. So let's take a look. Let me share my screen with you. Let's look at some other things here. Let me get rid of that. Okay, so in Tehillim chapter 68, this is a pasuk I just want to show you. We're going to come back to it from a Gemara in Avodah Zarah, but Rachav Elohim Ribotim Alfei Shinan. God's chariots are myriads upon myriads, right? Thousands upon thousands. We'll get back to that in a second. But look at these other verses that maybe give us a hint that there could be other worlds out there. Look at this. This should be a little familiar to us. It's taken from Ashrei. Malchutcha malchut kol olamim. How do you translate that? Your kingship is translated here as an eternal kingship. But if I were to translate this literally, what's this word here? Olamim, right? Your kingship is the kingship of all olamim, of all worlds, right? Usually we are translating this in terms of time, not space, right? So we're saying that God is the king of all time, but not necessarily multiple worlds. But if you were to translate this literally, it does sound like we're saying, and this is Ashrei, we say this multiple times a day, Malchutcha malchut kol olamim, your kingship is not just eternal, but it's for all worlds. So that would maybe imply that there are additional worlds. Or another pasuk from Shir Hashirim.
Rabbi?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was thinking we also know that he made our world, but he also made the heavenly bodies. I don't mean the heavenly bodies. I'm talking about heavenly beings that had choice and actual my words fail me. Sorry.
Well, let's come back to that. I think it'll all fit into place here. Let's look at another pasuk in Shir Hashirim. Shishim hema malachot u'shmonim pilagshim va'alamot en mispar. Right, there are 60 queens, 80 concubines, and damsels without numbers. Now, but again, look at this word here in the Hebrew, alamot. What does that look like a little bit? Same olamim, right? Worlds without number. Now, obviously, the context is talking about something very different. The context here is talking about queens and concubines and damsels, obviously. But again, maybe, just maybe, this could be a proof to us or a hint to us of that, like we try to find, like the question again was, where is there proof anywhere in the Torah for any of these ideas? Where do we find them? Where can we find them? Maybe we can find them over here. Maybe this is what it's referring to. And this idea that there could be this question, this theological question, I think actually, if you could believe it, I think NBC does a good job of explaining it. Let me show you how they explain it. Again, this is the NASA Mars rover landing seeks new alien life. Here's how that would change the world. So look at how they frame it. I think it's just so perfect. Finding Martian life should compel us to embed the notion that we are privileged, that humans are the sole sentient inhabitants of the universe. Indeed, we would not only have a strong indicator of cosmic company, but could infer that it's widespread. It would include beings that are beyond our own technical level, right? Such a realization would be as consequential to our self-image as when we learn that we are not separate from the fauna of our world, but simply a part of it. Suddenly, we would confront the likelihood that everything we accomplish has parallels in the actions of unseen others, and that what we find beautiful and worthwhile must have a billion other definitions elsewhere. And look at the next paragraph. And what of religion? Theology has famously railed against earlier scientific discoveries that seemingly diminished our central position in the cosmos, from Galileo to Darwin. How would it react to learning that not only is our planet not unique, but neither are its most celebrated inhabitants? So what does that mean for us? If we were to find alien life, what would that actually mean for us as people? What do you think? As Jews, theologically?
Absolutely nothing, unless one, first of all, I don't the way, they look at Mars, because Mars is the only place they can really get to and do research, in a reasonable time frame. If there are aliens out there and they have the technology to fly between galaxies and universes and hundreds of millions of light years away, and let's just say there is some proof there was life on Mars, it means nothing for us unless A, we can figure out a way to get to the place where the life actually does exist, or B, they come here in a way that's not either kept secret or is out in the open. So it doesn't really matter. It has no bearing on us whatsoever, really.
But in the creation story, why does God not let's play it out. We find aliens on Mars. Why does God not specifically talk about the creation of these beings?
You're talking about active aliens on Mars or like life on Mars, like plants or whatever?
Either way.
Well, either way, either way is a big difference, because if you find like life or microbes or plants on a foreign planet, then all you're saying is that their atmosphere has, whatever these organisms are, have figured out a way to adapt in an atmosphere that doesn't have water, doesn't have oxygen or whatever. That's alien in and of itself, but it's not a life form that we would be able to communicate with or whatever. So it wouldn't mean, all it would mean is that, that we thought that, there's reasons we didn't know about these other things that were going on.
But you're giving me science here. I'm talking now theology, right? So, but religiously,
so fine. Religiously,
our role in the universe.
Okay, so religiously, no, we don't have a role in the universe. We have a role on this planet. There's no alien, as far as we know, there's no alien life form on this planet. Human beings are the top of the food chain on this planet. So our role, unless we can go to some planet, like I said, unless we go to some planet where they have a civilization similar to ours, we only have a role on this planet. Now, theologically, I don't have, to me, it like I said, it doesn't matter. Now, if we were able to get to some planet, we showed up and they had synagogues and they were laying tefillin, that would be, theologically, that'd be shocking. We would want to know why Hashem put these other Jews on some other planet and we didn't have any part of it. But until that happens, I think it has no bearing for us.
So I hear what you're saying. You're making some good points. Let's delve a little bit deeper and see again, where could there
Rabbi,
be? Yes, sir.
What would happen if we tried to limit God? That seems like it's limiting God if we say that he couldn't have made other life forms out there that have intelligence, and then we would have to just deal with that fact. It's simply something we don't know about, or maybe we'll never have to deal with.
Well, one of the big questions I want to get to is it's called anthropocentricity, which is our central place amongst the universe. That is everything created for us, or are we simply part of a larger plan of larger cosmos? We're an important part. And that plays a significant role, because again, we have an entire story. We got an entire history of life on this planet. We got a book of laws, and yet it makes no reference to anything else. And so we have to kind of circle that square a little bit. And many, to be clear, we're not the first people to have been struggling with these questions. Many people have asked the questions. And what I want to do is I want to show you one form of asking the question, and then I want us to look to see maybe there are some Torah sources or rabbinic sources that might give more explicit mention that such a thing could exist. Because without having this idea rooted in some text or some idea or something, it's hard for us to suggest that it could be possible. So let's take a look. So I'm going to skip this. It's very interesting. It's called the First Intergalactic Art Exposition. Jonathan Keats put it together. It's very interesting. It's an interesting thing. But let's read from the R.A. Kaplan Reader. So one of the unique aspects of Judaism is its far-reaching universality. Not only does Judaism provide a lesson for every human being, its teachings extended to the very boundaries of the universe. it is an axiom of Judaism that the entire universe was created for the sake of man. In one place, the Talmud reckons that there are some 10 to the 18th power stars in the observable universe and explicitly states that they were all created for the sake of man. It goes further to state that all the angels and spiritual worlds also only exist for this purpose. Now, of course, this immediately raises a question that many find quite difficult. How is it possible that man, living on a dust mote called planet Earth, should be the center of the universe? In other words, if we are the center, then that means if we find life on Mars, what does that mean? How does that change our perspective, or for what purpose did God put it there? And so let's see if we can find some places where the Torah might allude to some type of extraterrestrial life. So one comes actually right before the story of Noach and the flood, which is the B'nai HaElohim, the divine beings, the sons of gods. The Rashi describes it as the sons of judges, Elohim meaning judge. They see how beautiful Benot Ha'adam are, the daughters of man, and by Yechulam Nashim Mikol Asher Bacharu, they take any of the women that they please. And so there's a certain depravity going on in the world, which we know leads to ultimately the destruction of the world as we know it. But at the very end here of this first few verses, chapter 6, Hanephilim hayu ba'aretz bayamim ahim. At that time, beings called the Nephilim were there at that time. V'gam achreichen asher yavo b'nei Elohim b'not Adam yadu la'am hema hagiborim asher me'olam anshe Hashem. Right? The Nephilim appeared on earth when the divine beings cohabitated with the daughters of men who bore them offspring. They were the heroes of old, the men of renown. So many commentaries want to know, who are the Nephilim? What's the root of the word Nephilim? Nafal. Some suggest that these were angels that actually fell from heaven, or that alternatively a legend is shared about how angels said, oh, it's so easy to be mankind. They have it so good. We have it so hard as angels. So God sent them down to see how hard it is to deal with the temptations of our world. They fell. They literally fell. If you ever see the Russell Crowe movie Noah, which I do not recommend, I'm just kidding. I don't know. I mean, I only watched the first 10 minutes. I turned it off. But they actually show a version of the Nephilim, of these divine beings coming from the heavens. But perhaps this could refer to something extraterrestrial, some type of alien life that comes onto our planet. So maybe this could be an illusion, because why else would the Torah make reference to it? That's one possibility. And Louis Jacobs, in his book Jewish Theology, actually quotes a Christian theologian named Jerome Eckstein, and he poses a question very from a Christian perspective, very interestingly. Let our imagination roam, and let us speculate about the possible conflicts between future discoveries of space exploration and our old religious beliefs, if these religious beliefs are understood as offering knowledge of the kind given by science. Suppose a strangely figured race of creatures with the approximate intelligence of humans and a culture of ethics dramatically different from ours was discovered on some distant star. Would this not pose serious problems to the dogmatic and authoritarian interpretations of the Judeo-Christian religions? Would these creatures, who obviously were not descended from Adam and Eve, be tainted with original sin? Right, this is the first thing that he thinks of. Would they too have souls? Would they be in need of grace, salvation? Right, so this is obviously a Christian theology, right? Would they be in need of a Messiah? Who are they? How do they fit into everything that we know about ourselves in terms of our life? And so I want to show you two different rabbinic texts. One comes from the Medrash, and the other from a piece of Gemara that might actually indicate that such worlds exist and could serve as a foundational idea for this thought process. The first comes from Breshit Rabbah. And we know that everything was created at its right time and its specific time. And in particular, we also know that God said that at the end of this, everything, he said that he sees everything that was good, and he says it was very, very good. The implication is if something is good, then that implies that something maybe was not as good. And so the Medrash tells us, and so the story goes that he created worlds and he destroyed them, and he created more worlds and he destroyed them. And he says, at Elu Amar, Din Hanian li Yaton lo Yahanin li. He says, these were good for me, the other worlds were not good for me. In other words, it's possible that in the creation of the universe, God created multiple worlds. So someone alluded to this. Wasn't happy with what he saw, so he destroyed them, started again, wasn't happy, destroyed it, until eventually God found our world. And this is the idea of Binei Tov Ma'od, right? He's found it was very good, it was very pleasant for him, it worked for him. And God finally felt like he had created a world worthwhile. But the implication of this Gemara is that at some point, other worlds were created, even though God destroyed them. And so if they were created, so perhaps there could be other life that's out there, or God could have created more. And this could be an allusion from the text, from the words Tov Ma'od.
Isn't this also a reference to that is used to explain the dinosaurs, and in other words, where 90% or more than 90% of all human life just went away? That could be a world.
Yeah, correct. So some use this. I was about to mention this. Some suggest that this could tie into like the Ice Age or dinosaurs. Like when we say that God destroyed worlds, it doesn't necessarily have to mean planets, but it could mean again like dinosaurs, Ice Age, etc. Absolutely, great point. Great point. Now there's another piece from the Gemara in Avodah Zarah that I want to share with you, which poses a fascinating question. So we know that the world works today scientifically in a bit of a different way. We know that while we are awake, those in Australia, for example, are asleep, right? We know how that works, right? There's like, a circle, right? And but the rabbis in the time of the Talmud, some actually did not understand what happens on the other half of the world or the globe. That's a whole interesting question about where does the sun go? Like, does it go under the world or does the world go around it? It's Natan Slifkin in his book has an interesting article about this. But the Gemara wants to know, well, what does God do when we sleep? It's a really good question, right? We know what God does when we're awake. He keeps the world going. But when we're sleeping, what does God do? Does he go and, pay his bills? Does he watch TV? What does God do, when we're sleeping? So this is the Gemara in Avodah Zarah, which is going to reference that first pasuk that we saw before. So the Gemara in Avodah Zarah says, I'll read in the English, and during the 12 hours of the night, what does God do when we're sleeping? So the Gemara answers, if you wish, say that the night is similar to the day, that God performs the same activities as in the day. And if you want to say instead, what does he do? He rides on his light cherub and flies in 18,000 worlds. As it says, the chariots of God are 20,000, even shinan, even thousands. Do not read it as even or shinan, rather read it as that which are not. Since the minimum of thousands is 2,000, the phrase that which are not thousands indicates that 2,000s were not present. So again, this verse here refers to that he has many chariots, myriads upon myriads, thousands upon thousands. What is God doing at night? Well, God is traveling to other universes to check things out, to make sure that everything is happening the way it's supposed to happen. So we're sleeping, and in the meantime, God goes and checks on the other many worlds and many other planets and life that needs God to check in on it. So this seems to be another proof, perhaps, from the Gemara that there could be a belief for this to exist. Now,
except one thing, real quick, that kind of defeats the word omnipotent. Omnipotent meaning he's there everywhere all the time.
Yes.
So why would he only need to go visit those other worlds when the rest of us are asleep?
Yeah, agreed. Right, agreed. And also, like, I think about Captain Marvel, if anyone follows the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So at the beginning of Marvel's Endgame, she shows up, and then War Machine, played by Don Cheadle, says to her, like, respectfully, if you're so powerful and so good, where were you when we were fighting Thanos the first time? And her response is, well, I was off on other worlds, because not every world is lucky to have the Avengers like you, so I need to protect other worlds. So, I'm not comparing God to Captain Marvel or Captain Marvel to God, but I'm just saying that this notion that God could be in other places, it's hard to wrap our head around that, because obviously we believe that God is every second of every day. But the Gemara is simply alluding to this as a possibility from a verse, which again, for us theologically, we need to be able to root these ideas somewhere. But we're not the first who struggled with this. There's a gentleman, Rav Chasdai Krushkis, wrote a book called Or Hashem. This was like 600 years ago or so. And he actually asks this question about life on other planets. Now, he actually approaches it from a philosophical perspective. I didn't bring the whole book, just pieces of it, some positive possibilities and some negative possibilities. And I just want to show you kind of his philosophical thought process. So let's take a look here at the Or Hashem. So one possibility is as follows. Among them, this is a possibility in the positive, that there could be alien life. However the world was created, whether by desire or requirement, why couldn't the desire requirement include another world or worlds beyond this one? In other words, if our world was to be created and there is a purpose to our creation, whatever the purpose is, so then why couldn't God create other worlds? Similar to what Robert said earlier, that would seem to limit God's abilities if we say that he couldn't create other worlds. And more than that, why did God create this world? Well, God created this world for us to do good in. And so if God created one world to do good in, so shouldn't God want to create many worlds to do good in? The more worlds, the more good gets done. So that seems to maybe be just a philosophical argument that really there could be other worlds. Now, on the negative side, he offers a number of different approaches. I'll just kind of talk it out loud. On the con side, he suggests the notion of multiplicity. Why is it that there are more than one tree on this earth? Why is it that there are so many different types of dogs? Why do we find multiplicity in creation and creatures? It doesn't make a lot of sense. And so he argues that God creates multiplicity only regarding entities which are vulnerable to deterioration, like animals and plants. So the whole idea of having multiple trees is if you chop down one tree, well, you have trees, that allows us to produce species and allows it to continue to exist. That's the point. And so the world, we're not worried about the world not existing again. We have a world that works. And so God did not make other worlds because there is no need for it. Now, this approach is obviously, I think, easily disproven for a lot of reasons. Most simply that we see that we're not treating the world the way that it needs to be treated, and it is quickly crumbling in front of our eyes. Just looking cold weather and snow that we got, like a freak accident in February, global warming is a real thing. But the point is that, maybe that you can argue that this is a proof that there should be other worlds, right? One day this world will run out of the resources that we need to have to survive. Well, maybe we should have that's proof that there's another world.
Or that man will destroy themselves, and it's an escape exit plan, if you will.
Correct.
Rabbi,
Yes, sir.
Let me throw this theory out, that God, in fact, did create other worlds, and that man has freedom of choice. And you were just saying how with global warming and pollution and all, what are we doing? And maybe God is saying, what of these worlds that I created are going to do the mitzvahs and take care of their world?
Yeah. I mean, again, we don't have, yes, good, interesting way of saying it. I wish I had the answers, because then I could write a book about this and go into it. Yeah.
Rabbi,
yes, sir.
Statistically, when you consider all the stars and they all have galaxies and this, that, and statistically, there are thousands and thousands of other worlds that have sentient beings living on them. But the distances between them are so great, the thought of ever them contacting us or we contacting them won't happen, because existence of man on earth is less than a twinkling of the eye in the total existence of the universe. So if somebody set out from Earth and went the distance to another world, long before they ever got there, Earth would no longer exist.
But my question is, I mean, I hear what you're saying, that they're at great distances. I'm asking this from not a scientific perspective, but rather like a Jewish perspective, a theological perspective. How do we make sense of that? How do we make sense of this idea that let's say there is other alien life out there, and we're just a speck in the great grand universe? So how do we make sense of the Torah, which doesn't have anything to do with anything beyond our planet? How do we make sense?
Earth is our speck. Our humanity is our humanity.
I know,
Our
but
Torah is our Torah.
Is the
So we
Torah
have to
not?
do what we've got. This is our whole world, and it will be our whole world, and there will be nothing else.
But
after
I'm
that.
asking. What I'm saying is, sorry to interrupt you, Matt. What I'm saying is that the Torah, God gives us the Torah, and the Torah is divine. It's literally from God. And if the Torah is this very important book of life, right? So do other planets have the same Torah? Do other sentient beings have aliens or whatever? Do they have the Torah?
Who says they don't?
That's what I'm asking. And if
Yeah,
he does,
sure.
how do we square that with the idea that God gave it to the Jewish people only?
But we know
If-
go ahead, doctor.
If there are sentient beings on other planets, they, like us, will, because they're thoughtful people or thoughtful sentient people, will inevitably try to figure out their origins and the meanings of their life, just as we have. And maybe their conclusions and everything about how they came to be and their purpose in the universe is probably going on thousands of times, because man is innately curious, and our curiosity will move whatever civilization forward to understand our own existence as we have on Earth.
That makes sense. But then why does the creation story not make any mention of any of this whatsoever? If the Torah is divine, and it's not a book that we wrote ourselves, the Torah comes from God, why would God not tell us about this? And this question comes to, let me just wrap up this idea from over here, one second, from Chastai Krushkas. So this is N, and then I'm going to take you to, I think this is a big question, philosophical question. So he actually argues, he says, since it's true that none of the reasons we presented, positive or negative, are sufficient grounds to determine the truth, and what they provide is only the possibility of multiplicity, it's appropriate that we don't distance the lesson from some of our sages from Avodah Zarah. Like we saw, this teaches that he travels amongst 18,000 worlds, meaning that his supervision travels among those worlds. So he says, we don't have proof one way or the other, so we should keep it as a possibility. But now let's talk about this philosophical question that we're kind of getting to here, which is, so what does all of this do to our purpose as human beings? Are we the purpose of creation? Right? Go back to Aryeh Kaplan's source over here. Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan over here, right? Of course, this immediately raises the question we find difficult. How is it possible man, right, is the center of the universe? Are we the center of the universe? For example, the Mishnah in Sanhedrin talks to us about why is man created on the sixth day. There's really two ways I think you look at this. One is that God had to get everything ready. It's like before you got dinner guests at your house, you clean the house, you set the table, you make the food, you want it to all get ready. So then when your guests come, it's going to be perfect. That's one possibility. Another possibility is that it's not that we were created last because God was getting everything ready for us. The other way that you look at this is that we're no different than mosquitoes, right? We just, we came in afterwards. We were just a little bit more complicated to create. We have the ability to understand in different ways, but we're not necessarily the purpose of creation. We're simply part of creation. And so what is the ramification of alien life, if it actually exists, on our role as people, not just human beings, but as Jewish people, as God's chosen people? What are we still the purpose of creation the way that our rabbis tell us? Or do we just throw out all those commentaries and all those ideas and the Chazal and the Gemaras and the Medrash and say, no, they just didn't have science. They didn't understand that there were other beings in the universe. How do we make sense of this? And this is actually a debate between Rambam and Rav Saadia Gaon. And I brought the text for you here so you can actually see it if you're interested. I don't think we'll read it inside. They're just two different approaches. One is the Rambam or Nevochim, and the other is Rav Saadia Gaon over here. And so the Rambam has, remember, the Rambam is a great rationalist, and he argues that man should not view himself as the purpose of everything that exists, right? God could have created man without many other entities. There's many things in this world that man doesn't need. We could exist without them. And I'm not talking about like, fidget spinners, right? I'm saying like there's lots of things that God created that our existence could still happen without it. And the fact that there were things that God created that don't directly impact our own existence, it seems to imply that we are part of an overall creation. Not everything was created for man. Everything exists for its own purpose. And so we're just part of a complicated, a big part, by the way, but we are part of a complicated creation that is the universe. And the purpose of creation is simply our service of God, right? And sorry, he says that those who think that our purpose is serving God and everything serves us to serve God, well, God doesn't need our service, right? The purpose of creation is just God's will. God did it. God said ki tov after every part of creation. And by saying ki tov, we see that each one has its own value. It is each individually good. And it doesn't have to mean that they are here to serve us. We're just simply part of something much larger. And Rav Soloveitchik actually writes on this on the Maravuchim and the Rambam and talks about how human beings are created actually with the same language as every other animal, every other creature. And we're just part of this larger plan. The world is not created for us. That's one way to look at it. But Saadia Gaon sees this very different. He has actually some beautiful, very descriptive language. I just want to show you. It's really cute. He says as follows, that customary practice in construction places the most honored element in the center of the elements that are not as honored. So we begin from the smallest things and note that a grain of kernel is in the middle of all the leaves. It's because the kernel is more honored than they are. For the plant's characteristics comes from the kernel. The yolk of an egg is in the center, for the chick comes from there. The human heart is in the middle of the chest because it's the dwelling of the spirit and the natural warmth, right? And so he argues that that the most important thing is always in the middle. Like the Sanhedrin is in the navel. It's right in the middle, right? It's in the Beit HaMikdash, the Kodesh HaKodashim, all in Jerusalem. Everything has these like concentric circles that go out from the center point. And so Saadia Gaon argues, he says that we are also the most important. We are the center of the universe. Everything kind of bridges out from us. God told us what to do. God gave us commands, unlike anybody else. And because of that, we are the center point of everything. And so he argues with the Rambam's interpretation, whereas the Rambam says that we're just part of a larger plan. Rav Saadia Gaon says, no, we are the plan. Everything in the world was created for us in particular. And the fact that we have free will shows that we are actually even more beloved than anything. And not just creations in this world, even extraterrestrial things. And I don't mean aliens, I mean angels themselves. Look at the Gemara in Sanhedrin. I shouldn't have closed my screen here. Look at the Gemara in Sanhedrin that talks about very explicitly that Chaviv in Yisrael yoter malchei hasharet, right? That Jewish people are more dear to the Holy One, blessed be He, to God, than the ministering angels. And we know this because Jewish people can recite a song of praise to God at any time. We can praise God right now, but ministering angels recite a song of praise only one time per day. There's other, we say Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, right? And the ministering angels say Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. So we mention God after 2 words. The ministering angels, the heavenly angels, they say after 3 words. So we have another proof that we're on a higher level. So we are the purpose of all of creation. Now, so according to Saadia Gaon, it's hard to believe that there could be intelligent life in the rest of the universe that could be equal or smart as human beings, because everything was created for our purpose. Whereas according to the Rambam, we can say there are multiple levels of purpose within creation, and perhaps there can be intelligent life on our level or even on a higher level in the rest of the universe. And so I don't have an answer, but certainly these are interesting things to think about, in particular as we wrap our head around our own purpose in the world. Why did God create us? For what purpose? Is the world revolve around us, or are we simply part of the rest of the world? And all of this, I think, plays a role in understanding what's happening on Mars right now. And it's certainly going to be very interesting to see what comes back if we actually can find some form of life and try to fit this into these ideas and these Jewish texts to try to understand this very, very complicated theological question. Okay, questions, comments, concerns?
Rabbi, there was an airliner that saw a UFO and even had a picture of it and said, is this alien life?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible. Yeah. I mean, there's lots of questions like that. But
Well,
again,
if we
yes.
find life on other planets, if those are not beings that have free will and they're simply animals, then do we have dominion over them? I mean, God said that we had dominion over the animals. So maybe the only thing that's out there are animals that would be that we have dominion over.
Yeah, I think it's possible. And I think we saw a few maybe allusions in some Torah or Tanakh texts that could allude to there being other worlds out there. But we still need to ask ourselves the question about how do we make sense of the creation narrative? What is our role? How do we connect with them? Like, if they're like animals, can you eat them? Right? Why does the Torah not mention them? Why are they left out? And so those are questions, big philosophical questions, in some ways theological questions that we have to keep on thinking. I don't think there are any easy answers. So, well, we'll stop here and wish